Emma Max, and I'm the founder and chair of the channel community and also the founder and CEO of CAE, a coaching consulting practice, and also a channel community gold supporter. Welcome to the next episode of Smashing the Class Ceiling. In this series, I will be interviewing and showcasing some of the fantastic individuals that we have in the channel who have all come from a low socio-economic background, but have also gone on to build incredibly successful careers. They will be sharing their stories of how they have navigated the corporate corridors and smashed through that class ceiling. So without delay, I would like to welcome my very next guest, Natalie Hailey. So Natalie is the People Services Director at CAE, and she's done an incredible job of leading the team that has built out their award-winning culture of belonging. Thank you so much, Natalie, for agreeing to come on the show and share your story with us. It's really appreciated.
Thank you.
So, Natalie, we've gotten to know each other quite well over the last couple of years and have had many a conversation about our upbringing and the impact that some of that has had on our careers, which is one of the main reasons why I wanted you on the show. Obviously, most people, however, won't know that story, which is where I want to start. I want to have a good idea of where you've come from and how you started off in your early career. So my first question is, tell me about where you grew up and talk to me about your early career.
Absolutely. So firstly, thank you for inviting me on. It's a pleasure. So I grew up in Watford, Hertfordshire, in what I would call a very normal family. So mum, dad, two sisters. I think we've spoke before as well about living in a council house. To me, that is entirely irrelevant. I lived at home, regardless of the ownership of my house. But I guess for the purpose of what we're talking about, it might have some relevance. So yeah, a very normal standard childhood in terms of schooling and whatnot, but I left school after my GCSEs, so I didn't go on to do any further education. So I started my career. I actually started when I was 14, so I used to work after school. So I used to walk after school to Subway, the sandwich bar, and carry out my duties as a sandwich artist. And I did that.
I like
sandwich
that.
artist. I was a sandwich artist.
That.
Yes, absolutely. And then I was promoted to sandwich artist team leader when I was about 16, actually, within there. So I used to work nights in busy Watford town centre. Anybody who's been there will know that it's quite rowdy. So yeah, I used to do the 8 till 4 a.m. shifts with all the drunk people spilling out in the nightclubs.
At 16?
When you're 16, yeah, it's a bit of an
Wow.
experience. So yeah, quite streetwise, and I think strong. That builds up your confidence and your resilience, definitely. So I think all of my sort of roles right from then all the way up have, yeah, they all add strings to your bow, don't they? So a lot of my social skills, I think, have been built in that sort of environment, dealing with drunk people a lot of the time or aggressive people. But yeah, really, really interesting as part of that. I suffered with a stutter when I was at school, and then I still have one now. I just mask it mainly quite well, but sometimes it does come out. But I suffered with it really quite severely actually when I was younger, and I really wanted to overcome it. So I threw myself into a telesales job. So when I left Subway, I then went to work for an ADT reseller alarm company, cold calling people, restaurants and things mainly, which was just horrible with a stutter. It was just the worst. People would hang up on me because I couldn't get my words out. But then you build up your confidence when someone feels sorry for you and they listen to you and they spend their time, and then that really helps you to build up your confidence. And I think I really latched on to those types of calls, and through there became quite successful actually in doing that. But it was time for me to move on. So moved into a sales coordination type role. So working for Europe Car, which most people would have heard of, car rental company. So very different to where I am now and to everywhere else I've been. That was probably my first corporate environment. So going from telesales into that environment was definitely a bit of a shift. But I had some really good role models and mentors that really took me under their wing, and just taught me the ways within that sort of environment.
Yeah.
And then I kind of merged my sales and that corporate kind kind of experience together and moved into recruitment. And then found a fascination of people. I was going to say a passion or a love for people, which if you ever hear a HR person say that, it's not often too true, but I have a fascination for people and for their
natural curiosity.
yeah, how everybody's
Yeah.
so different and
Yeah.
reacts and operates in different ways. I find it really, really interesting. So yes, I went on to do recruitment and did quite well there. And then I randomly did a life coaching course. I say randomly because it was entirely accidental. I was looking for like a dance coaching program. I used to love dance. And then I found this life coaching sort of thing. And I went along and did that and really liked it, which was random. So I then became, so I'm literally giving you my whole career history now.
No, that's
It's
exactly what
all,
we'd love.
yeah.
No, you carry on, please do.
Thank you. So the next role that I did was actually working for a government-funded organisation that supported those people who were unemployed. And we focused on predominantly hardest to help groups. So it'd be people with learning difficulties, ex-drug users, ex-alcoholics, people, mental health problems, confidence, and so on, who have been out of employment for a longer amount of time, essentially. And
Yeah.
my role there was life coach and employability sort of skills trainer. So a lot of one-on-one stuff dealing with personal barriers to work, but then some group sessions and facilitation in terms of the actual skills, life skills, I guess, employability skills to support people going back into the workplace. The funding for that was pulled at some point to some extent where it completely changed, which is where I had to move on from there. But really love that job. And when we talk about sort of social mobility and those sorts of things, that really grounds you, that really gives you a good perspective. I think because it's quite easy to lose that, even regardless of where you come from. Really easy to lose perspective.
Definitely.
Yeah, and then I got into HR randomly and worked in various positions in different types of organizations, some stiff, some corporate, some kind of more independent, very small. And then at CAE, which has probably been a mixture of almost all of those things in the almost 8 years that I've been here.
So that's how you got into the channel. You went from HR, then ended up in HR into CAE. So you came down that route. It makes a lot of sense to me now hearing your story in that detail of how you transitioned into the HR function, because knowing you as I do and knowing a lot of people that are in the people services type functions, you're quite a different personality and character. So your background, obviously, and your sales and stuff like that, that makes a lot of sense now. So it all makes sense. All these pennies are dropping. So you landed at CAE in the HR role, and how long have you been there?
Almost 8 years.
8 years.
Yes.
And is that the only, so did you start off as the people director or did you have other roles in there?
No, I've had other roles. Or should I say my role has grown as the business has grown, which is based on the needs really. So when I joined the business, I joined as a standalone HR manager role. There was around about 150 employees. We were based in Watford, a very different organisation to where we are now. So we didn't have many processes or systems and things in place. There was no HR function. So when it come to employment contracts and those sorts of things, it was what you would expect of a company of that sort of size. So my role was to come in and build a HR function with as many bells and whistles as I could get in. So,
and you've definitely done that for sure. So well done. What do you think your biggest challenges that you've faced, and how have you overcome them?
I think myself. I think I've probably been my biggest challenge. I think we all go through stages in our careers and in our lives where we lack confidence for some reason or another. And that really holds you back. And it'll be due, to different circumstances and situations, whether it's I'm surrounded by people that are 20 years older than me, I'm the youngest person around the table and that sort of thing. And sometimes you can feel quite inferior to people around you. and all I just remember, all I can hear in my head as I'm literally saying that is my dad kind of trying to, I would say coach me, but definitely wasn't coaching. It was a bit like, you know, nobody is superior to you. They might be senior to you, they might be more senior than, you know, and paid more money or a bit older, but they are not superior to you. You are equal. And to actually believe that takes an awful lot. You know, we've all been in meeting rooms where, you know, it's the highest paid person's opinion that really matters and things. And I think I've been brought up outside of work and inside of work to go, no, you've got an opinion. You know, what you say has got something to it. So make sure you say it. And that requires a level of confidence and bravery. So I think my challenges have always been myself. I have to take
Yeah.
accountability for that.
Yeah. No, and I think what your dad did, whether you call it coaching or not, was definitely great advice. And I think it's sort of when you grow up with in those types of environments, they, you know, you've got to stand up for yourself, you've got to protect yourself, you've got to sort of be a bit more, you know, bolshy than maybe you would if you're a bit more overly protected. You know, my dad was probably the same. He always was like, no, you know, be treated right. You have exactly the same opportunities. Just go for it. There was
Balance that as well, don't you? I think that's a bit of a balancing act. So I definitely went from sort of feeling that everybody is better than me, so you feel really inferior. Of, you know, even if it's, you know, somebody's got nicer clothes or a nicer car or a nicer house or a better job or more money or something like that, is you think that they're better than you because of that reason, which I think of that now and think I can't believe I ever thought like that. But then when you get that pumped into you, you can kind of go to the extreme actually, where there's almost this arrogance of, well, you're not better than me just because of that, which kind of pulls you the other side.
yeah,
So you have to balance it to go, actually, no, we're equal. We both bring value, but just a different type of value in a different way. That's taken me a lot to fine tune that, because I've definitely gone the other side where you almost come across feisty unnecessarily, and it's like you're not going to build relationships and trust and your credibility by trying to use aggression to
yeah.
balance your place at a table, if that makes sense. Bit of a fine art, I think. For me, it was anyway.
I think it's a constant learning, isn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah, because, you know, I mean, my parents certainly never understood the corporate world. They never, you know, I think I was the first person to actually work in an office. So
Yeah.
it's a completely different set of skills that you need to
Mm.
learn and understand, even just to the point of what you wear and how
Yeah.
you conduct yourself and things like that. It's a massive learning curve. And, you know, it's sort of you learn quick, and you know,
Mhm.
I was very lucky to have people that saw the talent and helped me and worked with me on some of those areas. And you mentioned earlier you had some great role models and mentors. So sounds to me like they've also done a great job of helping you get to where you are. But
Yeah,
no,
definitely.
fantastic. And what's your proudest moment of your career, and why is that?
Oh, that's a really hard one. I always feel really uncomfortable with those questions. I'm gonna go with my latest role within CAE, or my latest place where I've landed up in CAE. And I think the growth within the team, I know that probably sounds a little bit cliche actually, but you know, I was having a conversation with Zara and the team the other day, and she said, you know, I've really been reflecting at how much I've grown since I've been in this team and the things that we're doing now. I would never have imagined that a year ago, and so on. Like we've evolved and grown up so much as a business, but as a function within CAE, so much. And I do feel like I've been a major part of that, just in supporting individuals with their own personal growth. So I think, yeah, the maturity and the status of the people services function at CAE now to what it was when I joined, I feel really proud of that. You know,
You
definitely
should
not
be.
alone, but I do feel very
Yeah.
proud of that.
Well, you were the starting point, and you've led it, and you've brought people with you on that journey. And, you know, I've had the privilege of working with you. So I can testament the fact that in people's opinions of your division is incredible. And the culture that you've built, along with Justin and the rest of the leadership team, is spread out. You just have to talk to anybody and they all embrace it. And I've always loved your view of belonging as opposed to segregating individual minority groups. We're all, we should all be treated for our own unique values rather than put into these little boxes. And, that really resonated with me, and you can see it across the whole of the organization. So absolutely be proud of that. Well, it's incredible. And your team think nothing but, great things of you. And I know that from firsthand experience. So you should rightly be proud. And I'm glad you've
Thank you.
mentioned that. So how do you think that coming from a low socio-economic background has impacted your career, either positively or negatively, or both?
Sure. So let's talk about the negative side of things. And again, I go back to the point of I think, my biggest challenge has always been myself. So I think it's probably that imposter syndrome, not because I'm female, not because I'm young, but because I didn't feel like I belonged in certain environments, because I wasn't able to join in the same conversations. I wasn't able, to share experiences that other people might have had. So naturally, you're isolated from that discussion and you don't feel like you belong. And that can feel really lonely and intimidating, actually. So I think that's definitely been a challenge. So, if I think of my background, we never went abroad. I didn't really know much about politics, thankfully. It's not very well traveled, not very sort of well cultured on that side of things. So, when people start to get to talk about world affairs, I'm thinking, what on earth are they talking about? I can't contribute at all to this. Which actually is a good get out now, because it's never a good chat, is it? Let's be honest.
I was going to say, who'd want to? I mean, you end up like a complete rabbit hole if you end up in those conversations.
Yeah, definitely. But they would come about. I think, some of the environments that I've been in, highly academic environments. So a lot of the organisations I've worked in have been STEM sort of places of work. So lots of engineering, mechanical type individuals where their academic achievements are their badges, which means I don't have any badges because I don't have those academic achievements. So you start to feel, you start to shrink. And I think I have certainly shrunk in some environments. But then if I flip it onto the other side, I do also think that my background is what makes me grow, in that environment. So I think I'm quite personable. I think I can get on with most people. I can adapt. I can build relationships. And I think sometimes when you take somebody who comes from a background which is very different to mine, and when they meet with somebody like me who is straight talking, says it how it is, there's no hairs and graces, people tend to love that, because then they let down their guard and they start to relax. And then you can actually have a person-to-person conversation without hiding how you really feel or what you really want to say. So you just have really productive conversations and interactions, actually. You start to build a lot of trust and respect off the back of that, which I think has really helped me in my career. I've always been known in all of the teams that I work in for being the person that's got great relationships across the business with some of the most challenging stakeholders, because I see that as a challenge. And I want to be the person that overcomes that challenge as part of it. So I think that's also just really helped me as well, is that confidence to be able to go and build relationships with anyone, and to show vulnerability in the fact of, I don't know much about that, or I don't have a degree, but I can have a conversation with you. I've got a lot of common sense.
Yeah, and I think that's the flip, isn't it? You find a lot of people that are highly academic that have no common sense or couldn't strike up a conversation. So life skills are equally as important, I think, in terms of being successful. Going back to your early job as, sandwich, what was it? Sandwich artist at Subway. I think everybody should do at some stage in their career work with the general public in a services capacity, because I think you learn so much from it. Customer service, how to talk to people, how to engage in people, how to deal with difficult conversations. And I think that's definitely something that I've been exposed to as my journey. Because you have to get a job when you're young, because you want money, and if you need money to go and buy stuff, and no one's got a spare load of cash to give you, so the only way to do that is go and get a job. I
remember getting my first envelope of pay from Subway, which was a £50 note all on its own.
Oh, wow.
And it was the first time I'd seen a £50 note, and I went straight down the road and bought myself a pair of Miss 60 jeans.
Love it.
And that was it. My week's wages gone on a pair of jeans.
But
But yeah,
how good did it feel when you
it
bought
felt
those
amazing.
jeans?
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
it felt amazing. I remember thinking, this is like so much money.
I,
Yeah.
I remember my first full-time job, even though it was only YTS, and getting like, and it was like £35 a week. It was ridiculous. But at the end of the month, because you got paid monthly, I went out and bought a video player. It's like a video for my room. I was like a VHS video player. I was so happy to have this video player. I've never been so excited for anything in my life.
Yeah,
I think, when you've had to work so hard, and you appreciate it more, don't you? For sure.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
brilliant. So knowing what you know now and what you have achieved, what would you say to a younger version of yourself?
I would say, be yourself. I definitely went through times of trying to be someone that I'm not. Who doesn't?
Yeah,
Um, you waste a lot of time and energy and relationships on that, actually, because you can't sustain the relationships you built on being someone who isn't really you. Um, yeah, that's tiring. That's hard work. And you
yeah,
can't, yeah, you just can't be your best. You can't give because you're putting on this show, this act of somebody that you're not. Even the way how you speak, you're trying to speak different. I mean, that's hard. I use the words I use in the style that I do, in the way that I do. That's how I talk. Um, so yeah,
yeah. It is hard trying to. I think we all do. I think that's. I think also age thing as well, and experience, because you try to morph into your environment, and when your environment and the people around you are very different to you, you try and adapt the best you can to try and feel like you fit in.
to try and
Um,
fit in. I mean, how sad is that to
I know.
fit in rather than add something different? You're trying to fit in. That's not going to create anything special, is it?
No, and it's exhausting, like you said as well, you eventually get caught out. So you might as well just be honest about
Yeah,
it in the first
yeah,
place. Again, I think that's confidence, and just being more comfortable in your own skin,
yeah,
sort of also becoming that next role model for someone else to know that they can be like that, and they
mm,
don't have to be concerned if of their background or upbringing or their ethnicity or whatever it is that is making them feel like that they can just be themselves.
yeah. Just be you, and that's exactly what advocate belonging is all about.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not about looking at people for their differences. It's about looking for our similarities, but also our uniqueness,
yeah,
and allowing people to bring that. So yeah.
brilliant. So what support and help do you think companies could do to be helping individuals that are coming from a low social economic background?
So I think first of all, create the doors, the entry points for people to be able to come. Because I think
Yeah,
there are a lot of industries, companies where those doors don't exist. So, for example, from a recruitment perspective, they might have prerequisites around academic achievements for roles that don't really require, that kind of level of education. So I think for employers to really take a look at what it is they're supposedly looking for, to see whether, yeah, those prerequisites are in fact necessary, and take away as many barriers as you possibly can to then see who really does walk through the door. So I think the first thing is creating those doorways,
yeah,
for people to come into organizations. But then once they're in, is creating that safe environment for people to be themselves, respectfully to be
yeah,
themselves. And I say that because, sometimes when you talk about belonging, and I hear it a lot of the time, is I want to bring my whole self to work. I want to bring my whole, um, my whole authentic self to work. And I get that, and it sounds nice. But if you've got somebody who's into something that might not be appropriate for everybody to be into, you have to put a bit of a filter on it. And I always use the example of a naturist, for example. Like, if you like to go about your day completely naked, that's entirely up to you. But that's not going to be appropriate for everybody else, because you're going to make other people feel uncomfortable. So those people know, well, that's not appropriate for that environment. So I'm not going to bring my whole self to work. I'm going to leave that little bit of me at home
At
or
home.
wherever. Because yeah, I do think that's almost a bit of a right to just be you and not consider anybody else's feelings, isn't it? You know,
Yeah,
sometimes people think, well, I can just be myself regardless of how other people think. And I think, well, that's not advocating belonging. That's demanding it without advocating it, which is entirely different. It's almost a bit toxic.
yeah, and goes too much the other way then, and
Yeah,
people get alienated against it.
in silos, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's how,
The
yeah,
D&I bit went a bit funny. Is because yeah, it started to put people in boxes and
yeah,
then give them a microphone, and then all of a sudden they isolate people in other boxes. It's like, well, that was going to happen, wasn't it? You need to bring them together, and find something in common, which everyone wants, which is belonging, regardless of who you are and where you come from.
exactly. No, for sure. Yeah, and someone actually mentioned to me the other day about work experience was a great way as well. I think you guys have a great program, don't you? Like,
Um,
as if, or you're creating a program for work experience for the
yeah,
local kids.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've always done work experience, but quite informally, which, as much as it sounds like a good thing, it's then quite an exclusive thing, isn't it? Because then it only becomes, you know, for children related to people who work within your company. So
Yeah,
not very inclusive at all. So what we have done, and actually our first intake is on the 8th of July, is we've opened it up to our local schools within the vicinity. We've set, you know, a number of places, allowed a certain percentage for, you know, people who work here, for their children, nieces, nephews, and so on. But yeah, we've gone through an application process, which is based on their aspirations as opposed to their achievements, and inviting them in for a week of work experience to come and get, yeah, a feel of the place of work. Just come and test it out.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's very inclusive as well. I think, it's easy just to stick with the people that work there, but to go out, and I love that aspiration, not
Mm.
achievement. Oh, brilliant. Absolutely spot on. I bet that was one of your initiatives, wasn't it?
No, I don't think so. I'm going to give Rochelle credit for that one.
Okay, we'll
Yeah,
give Rochelle
Rochelle,
credit for that one.
yeah.
What one piece of advice is my last question for you? So, what one piece of advice would you give to somebody from a low social economic background who is trying to navigate a career in the channel?
Um, that's hard, isn't it? I think there'd be lots of different things. Build relationships, network within the channel. Don't just stick to the people that are like you. Really easy to do. And you will find them, which is great. They're there, they're your champions, they're your advocates, but to grow, mix with whoever you can. It can be quite a competitive environment. And I think in some situations, as we've spoken about, obviously, with what we do, is there doesn't need to be competition, but there can be learning, there can be advancement, through relationships and networking, which I think is great, just to get those different perspectives.
Yeah, that's come up a couple of times actually, on the previous ones I've done. So networking is definitely key, and that's one of the main reasons why we created the channel community, was to provide a safe, inclusive environment for people to do the networking if they feel a bit intimidated or unsure, because some of the events that run across the industry can be quite intimidating.
Yeah,
So that was sort of, we
yeah,
wanted to be the alternative to that. So there's never a better place to come and do it than the channel community. So networking, I love that. Natalie, you have well and truly smashed the class ceiling. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
thank you. Thanks for having me, Yvonne.
Thank you.